Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, based on wherever you are. We'll just give it a few seconds for people to join in. All right, let's get started. This is the first session of Ask Your Architect. The idea here is simple. We'll discuss architecture questions that teams deal with while working with Databricks and modern data platform. This isn't just a webinar or any presentation. We're not going through slides today. Instead, we'll be picking up questions and sharing how we typically approach these decisions in real project. What works, what doesn't, and what depends on context. So feel free to drop your questions in the comments while we go through the discussion. I'll give you a quick introduction of who we have today on the panel. We have with us Imran Beg, Senior Technical Architect at Exponentia AI. He has been working on enterprise data platforms for about 15 years across cloud and hybrid environments. A lot around scalability, governance, performance, and long term platform architecture decisions, especially on Azure and Databricks. Also, we have here along with us is Shalini Singh. She is a Databricks focused pre sales consultant who helps enterprises shape and accelerate their data and AI journeys. She works closely with businesses and technology leaders to design governed lakehouse architectures, real time analytic platforms, and scalable ML solutions. She specializes in Databricks architecture, Unity Catalog governance, and real time data pipelines. So we'll try to cover all the platforms from the architecture side and the AI implementation side today. So as you guys already know that we have circulated a form to collect questions from all of you today for this session. We have received quite a few interesting questions. So we will start by picking them one by one and have our architects answer them for you. Also, please keep in mind that you can drop in your questions at any point of the session in the comment section below, and we will try to take it towards the end of the session. So my first question here is to you, Shalini. We already use Snowflake, Synapse, Redshift. Why should we add or move to Databricks? This is the first question that we have from the audience.
Thank you, Mansa. So here the real question is, if we understand, do you want a data warehouse or a unified data platform, right? So I would say initially, you don't need a unified data platform if you would not if you're not seeing a long-term picture, if you would not have a use cases on machine learning, on Gen AI, on AI. But if you're seeing a long-term picture wherein you would want to power up use cases on your data, not just the data engineering, which yes, the analytics you can do it in your Snowflake, Redshift, maybe yes, but then Databricks offers you with a unified platform wherein not just you can have you can build your end-to-end ETL pipelines, but after your gold layer is built, you can have that gold layer ready and that can be consumed for powering up your advanced use cases like your Gen AI, your machine learning use cases, and having your NLQ based chatbots. All of those use cases can be built up on your one unified platform, right? So all of that cannot be done in your Snowflake, Redshift, on all of these tools. Yes, you can all of this can be done. You'll have to get in separate tools and integrate it, stitch them together and form a solution. But then it will be difficult. You'll have to have a separate governance tools on top of it for security, but then it will add on complexity. You'll have to have security issues. It will add on complexity. Instead, Databricks, how it helps you is it'll give you a unified tool which helps you with a tool like Unity Catalog, which helps you with governance. It has data engineering, it has analytics, it has BI tool, It has Gen AI capability. So all of this powered up under one umbrella called Databricks. So yes, that's an answer to your question.
Thank you so much, Shalini. Imran, would you like to add to that, or shall I move on to the next question?
Yeah.
You're on mute, Imran.
Thanks. Yeah, I think Shalini has well phrased it. I understand that, why she has mentioned those points. As to add to that point is that, that Bricks comes with a lot of layers in it. Whether it is data warehousing, whether it is AI, whether it's an app development, right? Or whether it is not only, people see it as an ETL tool, but it's not on an out and out ETL tool where you can build an AI agent as well, where you can have a warehouse. It's a data lake. It's a lake house in between. And if you want a simple dashboard, can still have a dashboard as well. So that dynamic is Databricks. So why not? I would like to ask a reverse question to that. Why not Databricks? So if it has so many capabilities into it, right? So yeah, over to you, Mansa.
Thank you. Thanks, Shalini. Thanks, Imran. I hope that answers your question. Uh, in fact, putting it back on you guys. So we have the second question as well here. That is, how do we control costs on Databricks as usage scales? Over to you, Shalini.
Yeah, so this is a major problem that we have seen across industries and in businesses. That cost is a major concern, is what we have noticed. So people who are already onboarded with Databricks, they what they think is, when we talk about costs, they associate it with clusters and the machine that is running. But it's not just that. Yes, that holds the major portion, but then there are other costs also that are associated. For example, the other tools that are linked. For example, the other services that you're using of AWS or Azure, whatever cloud that you're on. For example, for ETL, if whatever job clusters you're using. For BI, the SQL warehouses. For data sciences, the dedicated clusters. So it at Databricks, it is a combination of all of these costs that you manage and the operations of how you manage. At Databricks itself, there are various services that it provides, how you manage these costs. There are dashboards available, how you can at initial stages itself, how you can manage these costs and take the right action at the first level itself. Also, for example, there are long running queries and the team is already working on it, and we have accelerators at Exponentia. How we deal with it is, we have accelerators that keeps a track of all the long running queries, so that you don't get to see it at once the loss is done. So at stage 0 itself, you keep a track on it, and in fact project it, all the costs that are going on because of those long running queries. You check and keep a track, terminate that long running query. In fact, check what are the problems, that what are the DBUs that are consumed because of those long running queries, and then take an action. So these are some of the things. And also there are various techniques that we follow. For example, there are partitioning techniques for SQL queries. Okay. Yeah. And also, of course, there are strategies with respect to clusters, there are strategies with respect to warehousing. So all of these things we see for the FinOps, for managing the costs. If there is anything, Imran, that you would want to add.
Sure, Shalini. So you have covered largely out of it.
Yeah.
So one point, people, where the cost is affects organization is, sometimes, they use oversized clusters, so which is not used. So how to use an optimized cluster is more important. So how can you do that? So there is a metric page in a Databricks where it tells you, what kind of amount of CPU is being used and what memory is being used. So you have to set a threshold among yourself, so how many workers you have used, and what is kind of amount these workers are being used in your workloads. So keeping them not idle, and getting the right optimization of using right clusters, right, having the right partition as the clusters strategies, will definitely will help your causes. That's all.
Okay, thanks, Imran. Thanks for answering that. Next question we have from the audience is, how do we justify the ROI of moving to Databricks from our current data warehouse? Would you like to take that one, Imran?
Yeah, thanks, Mansa. I mean, that's a very interesting question. See, when you talk about ROI, right? People generally talk about the productivity gains, the immediate gains, right? So when we talk about Databricks, I can see, I can prove you that we can get immediate gains. So now nowadays, when we talk about the world with the data, right? People have the use cases like ETLs, data engineering, AI, right? And even to the apps, so AI agent. So to facilitate this, organizations use multiple tools to facilitate their use, and to overcome the use case, and to serve their needs. But where I see, from point of a Databricks, this all use cases can be done in a Databricks, and the platform doesn't charges you. The platform only charges you based on the compute, and it charges you on the amount you have used on the Databricks. Is it not interesting? I mean, the moment you take the Databricks, you have the leverage of using all these components, right? And then you have to go and pay and use. So from day one, I can see a rate of, ROI, returning to you as well. So that's where I see. I mean, it's a very interesting tool in terms of costing as well.
Okay, thanks for answering that, Imran. Shalini, would you like to add to that? Am I audible?
I'm so sorry. Yeah. I was not able to unmute myself. Yeah. So I think Imran has covered, but yes, when we talk about ROI, we get the results when we talk about long term, because when we think about all the components, stitching them together, yes, we get the responses. Because when we also have worked with the customers, we have seen when we maybe in shorter duration, or when we talk about smaller workloads, maybe we don't see the you know results. Maybe you'll not see the outcome, but when you migrate all of your workloads, when you bring all of the sources to Databricks, then at a larger scale you'll see the difference, and then you'll realize its importance. So yes, it is tested with all of our customers that we have migrated them to. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Shalini, for covering that. We have a next question also. When should we use serverless versus classic, all-purpose or job clusters? Shalini, would you like to take that?
Yeah. So this is a frequently asked question, especially now. I mean, even I was struggling with this question for a very long time, because initially we were only into the non-server or classic compute. But now, since the serverless is coming into the picture, and all the services that are now getting launched, for example, Lakebase is there, Databricks One is there, all of this is working with serverless. But again, we have to see what is our need, what is the requirement. So it depends on a lot of factors. For example, what is the workload type, what is the predictability, what is the governance need. So all of these, it depends on a lot of factors. For example, in serverless, there is a very short cold start time, whereas in classic, it takes around 3 to 5 minutes, right? But however, serverless is a bit expensive. But yes, we are pitching serverless only to customers because it is being supported everywhere, and now especially by Databricks also, and by all the tools. So if, for example, for BI workloads, if there is high concurrency of user access, there are short running SQL queries, in those cases, we recommend going ahead with serverless. And if you're just developing something, and there are heavy joins, there are heavy aggregations, and there are just batch transformations, and clear infra requirements are clear, and what scaling requirements would be there. So in such cases, it is the configurations are easily, you can easily configure the requirements at initial level itself. You know how many worker types would be required. In such cases, you can, at initial level only, you can define, your requirements, you can go ahead with server. However, I would say serverless only is preferred in production environment. However, in development, you can go ahead with classic ones. Yeah.
I think that answers the question perfectly. Thanks, Shalini, for that. Our next question is, what is the right data modeling strategy in a lakehouse, star schema, or one big table? Imran, over to you.
Yeah, that's again a very nice question. It completely depends on what use case you are working on it, right? If you're working on a BI reporting kind of a thing, and you're working on structured data, then the star schema would fit very nicely there. And if you are working something like exploratory analytics or AI workloads, where they, uh, where one big table would serve, but saying one big table will be a de-normalized model, and that other whereas star schema will be normalized, a little bit normalized model. So again, there is no right strategy for one or one right formula for everything. So you have to decide which use case you're working on, and then you have to choose the strategy according to it, right? If you are again saying you're working on BI, then you can use star schema, or even to the dimension modeling as well, or snowflake modeling, and if you're using your exploratory analysis, go for a big table. That's all, I think. Yeah, for 2 months.
Okay, great. Thanks, Imran. Thank you for covering that. We have another question. This is, yeah, how do we handle data sharing across organizations securely? Again,
Uh,
Imran, would you?
yeah, I'll take that once. So data is very critical, right? So for everyone, so sharing data across the organization is very critical. I mean, you have to be uh, secure. You have to transfer data very securely, right? Databricks has one feature where it's called as delta sharing, where you can, share the data in the delta sharing without copying the data set, right? And still, you can have the access control on it, and then you can share and data and control the, share the data according to the business needs, and control the data what is required by the partners. So, and another one way of sharing the data is through an APIs as well. I mean, normally these things are very normal in these days, where where you use APIs. So Databricks has a rich set of APIs where where you can keep the data into tables, and I can give access to particular table, and ask particular user to query data from where with the right authorization tokens, and then you can get the access for that particular data. So if you ask me, delta sharing is one good option, and people are generally using this as one way of sharing data across the organization.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much, Imran, once again. Next question I have for you, Imran, again is basis on your experience, what should be the right cluster and warehouse strategy?
Uh, Warehouse strategy, right? Clusters again. Now, assume that you're working for a development, right? There's a different cluster. You can let's start with the development. So when you're using, when you're developing, right? Uh, you have to use your all-purpose clusters. And if you are running your production pipelines, you have your job clusters. Now, if you are running, if you want to do some interactive works, right, and just some ad hoc works when you don't know what is your overhead, what is your, in that cases, serverless is best approach. But saying that if you know what your data is and what size it is, and dimension it is, so better to use all purpose, or based on, again, uh, if it is in production, go for a job cluster. If it is not, then all purpose cluster. It's the best thing.
Okay, thanks, Imran. Thank you for answering that. Shalini, anything you'd like to add, or shall I move on to the next one?
I mean, yeah. So if the workload is even bigger, what you can do is you can go to a deeper level. So if there are multiple pipelines in your production environment, what you can do is you can split the clusters as well. You can choose a smaller cluster for your smaller pipelines, and for the transformations that involves a higher joins or complex transformations, you can choose a bigger transformation or bigger configuration cluster. So that way you can go to a granular level that can optimize your cost for clusters, and similar goes for the warehouse as well. So that this strategy we have implemented for a customer, and we have seen difference in the cost. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that should help answer that question perfectly from both of you. Next question we have is, how do we ensure FinOps discipline on Databricks? Imran, over to you.
Yeah, yeah, I'll take that. Who doesn't want to save some pennies, right? Everyone wants, I mean, want to save some pennies, and I mean, if you want to save some pennies, there are some certain disciplines we have to maintain, or certain frameworks we have to take care of it. What are those frameworks? So when you use a Databricks, right? So you should have a tagging strategy. So that is where that Databricks is such a tool. It can give you, if you configure properly, it can give you the cost that is being used based on by user, by resource, at very granularity level. Even by the queries, I mean, it can that can be done. So to that granularity, when you can get the cost, right? But to that, there are certain things that we have to take care. One is as I mentioned, tagging strategy, to know where and how, and which query or which table that is being used, or which department that is being used, or which project that is being used. So to have that tagging strategy, having budget alerts, so certain, you have, everyone has budget for allocation for a certain projects or certain area, right? So to have right alerts at right moment, people, what happens is, if you don't educate uh, the trainees, or the developers, or the people who are working on Databricks, they tend to leave the clusters open, and not, I mean, and if the architects, I mean, if the creator of the cluster has not turned on the auto termination, the cluster keeps on running. And that is where, so there might be a generation of cost there as well. So discipline in having policies of clusters, discipline in having strategies, discipline in having the budget alerts, right? This will all help you in optimization, and get your finance in proper order. And you pay what you use in that terms. You stop paying extra that is not what is not needed. So there is little bit smart strategy here and there, where you have to be very alert. If you can put your common sense, and then you be little bit alert, and read the tables. If you're able to read the system tables will tell you a lot, where you can optimize your frameworks.
Thanks, Imran. Thank you so much for answering that question for all of us. We have another question. Also, we just have a few more questions left. So, a quick note to the audience: if you have any questions that are probably just still popping up in your head, please drop them in the comment section. So, we have two more questions to go. Second last question is again for you, Imran. When should we go for Photon?
A photon, it's a very interesting feature in when you create a cluster, right? Now, Photon is enabled, is when you use, mostly when you are using SQL and data lake workloads, especially when you are dealing with large joins and aggregations and BI queries. So what happens is, when you use Photon, normally your queries might compute fast, and your query may result give you result very quickly, and compared to the non-photon cluster. But even when it gives you very quickly, it also reduces the cost as well. So to using of compute, right? At the I mean, it's very strategic when to use it and how to use it. You have to see the workloads, what kind of workloads. SQL data lake, SQL data lake, lakehouse, large joins, I'm doing aggregations, BI queries, how long it is, how big it is, if I if how fast it is doing, you know, I mean, uh, so again, to coming to the linking to the cost of optimization, because most of the questions, were related to the cost, right? So I want to add one more thing. See, what happens is, when you put a photon, and if it can execute you fast and fastly, and if and and there is it, and when it executes fast, there is consumption of db is also less, and you're saving there as well, right? So these are the few things, where how one photon to be used. Yeah, it, that's all I think, Nancy.
Thank you. Thanks, Imran. Thank you for adding that. My one last and final question: how does Unity Catalog improve governance compared to traditional Hive Metastore? Shalini, if you'd like to answer that.
Yeah, sure. So Hive Metastore is the traditional way of managing the data in Databricks. So Hive Metastore is basically that provides metadata management, right? Whereas Unity Catalog, it provides enterprise grade governance. So traditionally, governance was often, workspace managed. Well, as in so at workspace level, the data used to be managed, so policies needs to be duplicated, and the cross workspace access used to be it was harder to manage the data at across workspaces. Whereas when Unity Catalog came into the picture, one metastore can govern multiple workspaces, so policies that are defined once can be enforced everywhere, right? So what happens because of that? So there are the various capabilities that it comes along with Unity Catalog is fine grained access control. Now you see, that there are granular level access control, RBAC, the row level, column level access control that can be managed. So for example, that the data, the US data, if you would just want to share that particular data, you can mask the India data. So all of that can be done. The automatic lineage tracking, the column level lineage, impact analysis before the changes are done, all of that you're able to see it because of Unity Catalog. Earlier, the traditional way of managing the data through Hive Metastore, it was difficult. It was because it was managed at workspace level, hence it was very difficult. This was not possible. Similarly, if we talk about audit and compliance readiness, that was not possible. So it was only legacy. In legacy environments, it was all managed in a single workspace, so there was very limited governance that was managed, that was possible earlier. And now all of this lineage access control, metadata management, all of this is possible through this tool called Unity Catalog. Now the both are available, but then all of this advanced governance that is possible is through Unity Catalog. Yeah, so I hope that answers the question. Answer.
Thanks, Shalini. Thank you so much. Imran, would you like to share your thoughts as
Yeah,
well?
yeah, yeah. I think Shalini has summed up very nicely to that. I'll just brief it up. What it does is when you earlier, when it was Metastore, right? It was at workspace level, right? When Unity Catalog came in, it is now at the account level, which means that account has multiple workspaces, right? When you say Unity Catalog, right? So it does user management to your data lineage, uh, towards your column level masking, towards your row level masking, right? So all that, all whatever possible the governance plus, and for other tools, when you compare to this part, is that they have to buy another tool to get this governance done, right? So in to that, Databricks adds you a flavor of Unity Catalog, so you don't have to go somewhere. There's another tool. It's inbuilt in Databricks where you can leverage all these facilities, right? Where you can use this, and and govern your Databricks.
Perfect. Thanks, Imran. Thank you so much for answering that. We have no other questions as of now from the forms. Let me just have a quick view of the comments if we have any. We'll wait for about 30 seconds if anybody in the viewers has any questions. If not, then we can go ahead with closing the session today. Okay, I don't see any activity right here. I think all our questions are answered. Thank you everyone for joining in today and for the great questions that have made this discussion truly valuable. And special thanks to Shalini and Imran for sharing the practical insights and the real world experience. We're so glad you both could spend this time with us today. We look forward to seeing you both again in the upcoming future sessions. And to our
Thank you,
dear
Mansi.
audience, thank you. And to our dear audience, we really hope this session helped bring some clarity to your Databricks decisions. We will be back next month with a new topic and a new session, maybe the same or different architects. So if you want to keep this discussion flowing, please, about a specific use case or keep the continue the conversation, just drop a question in the comments, or you can reach out to us directly over LinkedIn as well. Thank you, everyone. See you in the next session.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mansa. Thank you, everyone.